Well, Kenny, quite the game at St James's Park. You said you thought Newcastle were going to win it this afternoon. I was going to ask you first maybe how you feel they went about winning that game, but maybe more specifically, how instrumental was Bruno Guimaraes in winning that game?
I'm all about the specifics, Stephen, you know that. Well, he wasn't the only one. He had a fine game, particularly kind of second half. He provided a key moment, great cross into the box for the opening Newcastle goal. But I think there was outstanding individual performances kind of sprinkled all over the Newcastle team. That Newcastle midfield, I really like the look of. Guimaraes, we speak about as kind of a holding midfield player with Longstaff and Willock either side of him. Both of them have license to get up and down the pitch and arrive in the box. Saw plenty of that first half. The counterbalance is Guimaraes just holding that kind of central area of the pitch, but he's not just a defensive midfielder in that respect. I think his natural inclination is to take him up the pitch as well. I think he fancies himself a little bit. That's not kind of doing him a disservice when he gets in and around the opposition penalty box. We've seen him score a couple of goals, spectacular goals already for Newcastle, so no surprise really at that point in the second half when maybe Newcastle needed a little bit of a kind of inspiration. He was the one who provided it, kind of surging forward from that kind of deep line midfield position, getting in the box and across a real quality, just kind of dinked to the back post, wasn't it? Alan Saint-Maximin cushioned the lovely header back across, and Willock really had a tap-in header. But it was a great team goal, and it was the decisive moment in the game. I thought United never looked as if they were capable maybe of playing their way back into the game. 1-0 is always a precarious scoreline, but you always felt the likelihood was Newcastle United were going to go and get the second and possibly third goal. That's the kind of mindset they were in after they got the opening goal. It wasn't a case to sit back, was it, and protect. Never got a sense of let's protect this 1-0 lead. There was a bit of nervousness there, a bit of self-doubt. It was actually the opposite. It was like we're 1-0 ahead. It was kind of as if, right, let's go and play now. Let's go and get that second and third goal. That was the kind of attitude within the stadium. You could sense it. So yeah, they were deserved winners in the end.
Callum Wilson came on to score the second goal from the bench, and that was a real indication of the strength and depth in their squad as well when they brought in the three players, Anthony Gordon, Joe Linton, who would have been a regular starter, but Joe Willock seems to have got that berth now.
Yeah.
And Callum Wilson, as I mentioned, scored the goal.
Yeah, real quality in those kind of central midfield and forward areas of the pitch, and versatility as well. Spoke about Joe Linton, probably Newcastle's, for me, standout player first half of the season, playing at that Joe Willock road, left side of that kind of narrow midfield three. He's come out of the team. Willock's come in. You can't drop him at the moment. Longstaff as well. His work rate, his tenacity, his physicality, his running power he brings into the team. You just can't leave any of them out. So Joe Linton comes on today and he plays forward of the front three, plays left of the front three, and he's more than capable of playing there as well. Gordon as well, player, some outstanding talent, real kind of high energy player as well, and they really impacted the game. Wilson got the goal coming on, typical Callum Wilson goal, attacking across in between the two goal posts. But those are the Newcastle substitutions, really impacted the game. And yeah, as you said, Stephen, indication the growing strength and depth in this kind of Newcastle squad. I haven't spoke about Almiron, again, outstanding first half of the season. He's out injured at the moment, probably don't need him in terms of the quality which they have. I think there's scope for improvement, don't get me wrong. That might seem a little bit harsh looking at Newcastle third in the league. At the moment, still think there's areas of the team that they can improve upon, but I think they will. Eddie Howe strikes me as a very kind of astute manager. I think he feels he knows where he needs to improve kind of going forward. But
you mentioned centre half, and you think that Cher doesn't have that quality that they need in there, and a bit more depth as well. Is Botman good enough?
Yeah, I think he looked better with a better one alongside him. I think you're right. I think if you look at them individually, Botman and Cher, I don't think they're up there in terms of, if you're looking at maybe top five centre halves in the league. I don't think any of them would come into the conversation. I know it's all about the partnership. Don't get me wrong. I'd look at Botman kind of medium to long term going forward. He's probably the one I'd hang my hat on. Cher, like I said, an experienced player. Yeah, you should like to keep him around the squad maybe if you're keeping four centre halves at the football club. But I think to get to where they want to be, Newcastle United, and where they want to be is challenging for the big trophies. And the big trophies are a Premiership title and Champions League. For me, they need to strengthen there, and I think potentially they will. Even maybe left back, Dan Burns done great there, but for me, probably not a natural kind of left back in that sense. So I think maybe a top class kind of specific kind of left back again is another area, but we're kind of nitpicking at the moment. I think he's doing great with the squad he has available to him at the moment. You've got to be careful you don't bring too many players in too quickly as well, Stephen. It kind of upsets the balance. your two kind of strange personalities into the dressing room. It can upset the balance in there as well. So I think just to kind of drip feed players into the squad is the right way to do it, and he's done that. He hasn't upset the apple cart in the dressing room. They look like a tight group, the dressing room's together. I think that's the most important thing. Eddie Howe realises that, the players will come in the summer and probably the summer after that, but it's important that kind of team dynamic and the team spirit within the confines of the dressing room. I think they have that.
And will they, do you think, when St James's Park, we're looking at St James's Park next season, will we hear that famous Champions League anthem bellowing around?
Yeah, well, I think we will. I fancied him, to be honest with you, for quite some time. I just like what I've seen as soon as he got in there, Eddie Howe, and certainly early part of this season. I just thought a window of opportunity was presenting itself. Liverpool having their issues, obviously, this season. Tottenham really inconsistent season for them. So because of that, Manchester United obviously had a very slow start to the season. They're obviously in transition Chelsea to a certain extent. Well. Yeah, Chelsea exactly, almost self-imploding. So very early in the season, you looked at them and thought, wow, what a real window of opportunity for somebody like Newcastle. Because of the strengths of the manager, for the reasons that I've said in terms of the squad that he's put together, just felt as if, this could be this day. I think there was a bit of distraction there post-World Cup, Carabao getting to the final. Maybe the players took their eye off the ball a little bit too much focus on the Carabao Cup final. But since obviously that's finished, I think the whole focus has come back onto the league. He's kind of pulled the whole dressing room together. I think the focus is back, which they had early part of the season. We saw that today in terms of the performance. So I think they're in a good place. And for me, I think they will. I think they will get one of those Champions League places, which would be an absolutely phenomenal achievement for Eddie Howe and his players.
Just finally on them as well, because Eddie Howe, I suppose there would be people looking at him quite suspiciously over all the stuff that goes on off the pitch as well, the way the Newcastle takeover, and people weren't happy with the way Eddie Howe conducted himself throughout all that, and in response to maybe some legitimate questions around the ownership and that kind of thing. But as well, some people maybe doubting his managerial coaching abilities because of the fact that he's basically had as much money as he wants to spend. How much credit do you give him for coaching that team to be as good as they are now?
I give him a huge amount of credit because I've looked at the way he's set up that team this season. Eddie Howe's reputation off the back of Bournemouth, playing a very open, expansive, maybe too much, trying to play the beautiful game and not getting the balance right, not maybe respecting the defensive side of the game as much as he should have. It was almost the opposite argument that you're mentioning there. He was too forward thinking in his approach, didn't give enough thought to the defensive side to his game. A little bit of an impression at that. I kind of Bournemouth, how he set the team up there. But you look at the job he's done at Newcastle in terms of their defensive record, the defensive structure there, you can tell this is a team which is really well drilled. Whether he's doing it personally on the training pitch or he's given that responsibility to his staff around him, I'm not too sure, but you can sense that he's actually driving it. So I give him a huge amount of credit for that in terms of the tactical setup in the team this season. They've been absolutely rock solid. The defensive structure has been great, and they've really carried the threat as well, particularly on counter-attack. Really physical team. No team's going to out-bully, out-muscle this Newcastle team. We mentioned it again today. Real monsters on the pitch. The running power which they have. Willock, box-to-box runs, Longstaff, just continuous over the course of the 90 minutes. Real dynamism high up the pitch in wide areas. Isaac developing into a kind of a top-class centre-forward as well. So real grounds for optimism. And he's put all that together, Eddie Howe. It hasn't just fallen into his lap. He's kind of nurtured that over the past kind of year and a half and pulled it together. So, I give him a huge amount of credit. And I'd even take, not issue in terms of what you said, I understand what you're saying, a bit of criticism coming his way off the back of the takeover, but I think he's handled it very well. I think it's very easy to get yourself caught up in terms of issues of the ownership. You start making comments and start giving opinions on issues where you're not overly familiar with, you haven't properly resourced it. In those situations, I think you're better just taking a step away, just saying, look, I've been contracted here, I'm the manager of the football club to manage this group of players and the dressing room, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to answer any of those other questions. I think that's fair, and I think the majority of football people actually respect that.
Manchester United, it wasn't so long ago, we're kind of looking at their position on the table, their closeness to Arsenal and City, and thinking, they might actually have a title challenge going on here, but now they could be out of the Champions League spots tomorrow night.
I know. I'm not laughing at Manchester United here.
They should qualify though, shouldn't they? They should be in the top four, you think, at the end of the season?
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't know. I think, like I said, it's been a bad last couple of weeks. They're still right in the mix, don't get me wrong. Never quite bought into they can win the title. Probably about a month ago. They were never good enough to do that, potentially challenge Arsenal. Or Manchester City. Realistically, it was all about Champions League football, the position that they've put themselves in. But this is the business end of the season now. They've done great to get themselves to this point, but they've had a wobble the last couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, underlying issues, maybe lack of Casemiro for the last couple of games. They need to get him back. Does he strengthen that area of the pitch? Yes, of course he does. So another challenge for the manager and his players now. Off the back of the horrendous start which they had to the season, pulled it together, went on an unbelievable run. Now they've had another wobble, and teams are putting a run together. Newcastle in particular, Tottenham just might. Conte leaving the football club might just spark something at Tottenham. They might find a little bit between now and the end of the season. So Manchester United are going to have to match that for me. They're not going to tip their toe away potentially into a Champions League qualification spot. They're going to have to grab it, and to grab it, they're going to have to find some consecutive wins between now and the end of the season. Looked a little bit out of sorts today, a little bit disjointed. You could mention Casemiro out of the team. That's a little bit too simple. Just thought they looked a little bit out of sync today, a little bit open, particularly in that kind of central midfield area. Substitutes really did make an impact. Spoke about Ten Hag this season. Substitutions coming on, impact in the game. Great in-game management. Didn't really happen for them today. So, yeah, that'd be a little bit demoralising result for them today. Chins will be on the floor a little bit from those players. Haven't seen too much of that the past couple of months from Manchester United players. So, yeah, the manager needs a reaction. He needs to find a couple of solutions as well. Because, like I said, business end of the season now. And United need to find a little bit of form and match the kind of performances and the results of the teams around them, Newcastle in particular.
And that's when you need, because they've got a couple of injuries, that's fair enough, and players that will be really key to getting United where they want to be. But you've got players still in the team like Fernandes and Rashford who really had off days today. Rashford, you wouldn't want to criticise too much because he's had a sensational season. But Fernandes, a lot of people criticise him over his performance against Liverpool. He looked like he just gave up. But then he came back against Southampton, showed a bit of leadership in that game. But again today there were situations where he was just really lax on the ball, getting the ball nicked off him in situations where he shouldn't really be. He was trying to drop into different positions, trying to run the game. It was just, I didn't think it looked like a captain's performance.
I wouldn't blame him. Yeah, I know what you're saying. He was on the periphery again, but what I say about Fernandes is he never goes hiding. Always looks to get on the ball and make things happen. The defensive side of his game isn't the strongest, we know that. Just felt looking at United today, I was never quite sure. The manager changed it so many times today. That first half started with Rashford down the middle, Fernandes off the kind of left. After 20 minutes, Rashford was off the left. Fernandes was playing as a 10. Then he was playing deeper. McTominay was pushed off to deal with Grimaldes 10 minutes before half time. Again, there was a change second half. Weghorst came on, Martial. So a lot of changes there. I think sometimes as a player, you just want to get a fixed position for a run of games. And you can see that with that Newcastle team. Those kind of three in midfield, up front, a little bit of variation up front, maybe the wide players. But by and large, the kind of team picks itself. Looking at that United team, too many changes during the game today. Players been asked to play different positions, formation changes as well. You talk about Fernandes there today. I couldn't tell you what position almost he was playing today. He's playing everywhere, very loose in terms of drifting all over the pitch, deep midfield positions, wide left, dropping into full-back positions to receive the ball. Just feel as if you need to get back to basics sometimes and just simplify the game for players. And for me, it's a case of Rashford you speak about today. Next couple of games, give him a position, wide left or central striker, put him there and keep him there. Just felt he got a little bit disillusioned today, starting central. I think he fancied himself today, that central striking role. Got in down the sides a couple of times in behind Cher. I think he would have been thinking, this is my game today. Keep getting me the ball in these central striking areas. I'm going to score. Suddenly 25 minutes in, he's hiked onto the left wing. He's not seen as much of the ball. Saw a bit of frustration creeping into his game. Chin was down, giving away a few cheap kind of free kicks. So I think just needs to nip that one in the bud a little bit, Ten Hag. Not for me to preach to Ten Hag how to manage Manchester United, but there was a lot going on there today. Personnel, tactical change, a little bit too much for me. Almost like the players themselves, your head starts spinning. Hold on, Gaffer. Let's get back to basics here a little bit. Just feel as if United have to get back to that maybe over the next couple of games.
And do you think that's down to the fact that his squad is quite thin when they get so many injuries, and because he has done a really good job, but he looks like a really good manager, and he's handled so many different situations really well, like the Ronaldo situation, for instance. But he is only just in the door. Do you think it's a case where he's going to need a couple of transfer windows to build a squad in his own, the way he wants the squad, and then he will have the options that he needs to make those in-game changes?
He'd probably say that. I think it's a couple of transfer windows will help in terms of building up that kind of squad depth. But he's still got some good options, particularly high up the pitch. Sancho off the bench today. He's got the options of Martial, Rashford or Weghorst high up the pitch, Anthony off the flanks, Garnacho. No, he's been injured, so he has a couple of options there. Just felt the balance wasn't right today. Thought they were very loose United. Spoke about no Casemiro, and before the game McTominay and Sabic are having to really discipline themselves, Stephen, in those central midfield there. Sit behind the ball for the first 20-25 minutes. Give that bit of defensive solidity, that screen and that central midfield. Neither of them are great defenders for me, so the defenders a pair in there. But didn't see a lot of that. Both of them getting ahead of the ball, looking to get into the penalty box. Bruno was dropping into kind of midfield. He was kind of anchoring that midfield at times, and that's the last place you want to see Bruno Fernandes anchoring the centre of midfield. So all a little bit loose and kind of frenetic today for Manchester United. Wouldn't overly overthink it maybe, because by and large the performances have been very good. But of late it hasn't been the case. Yeah, Casemiro will help certainly coming back into that central area of the pitch with the qualities which he has. But you're right. They're not the finished article. They're not capable, for me, at the moment, of challenging for a league title. I don't think too many Manchester United supporters think they are. So, yeah, he needs a bit of time. But those decisions which he makes in terms of recruitment have to be right. It seems as if all the top clubs are chasing the same players, really, this summer in key areas. Those central midfield areas. Liverpool crying out for somebody in that area of the pitch. Chelsea still for me, maybe even Arsenal. Manchester United got to be chasing those players as well for me in the summer. Whether it's the likes of Bellingham or Declan Rice and players of that ilk, they have to be chasing those type of players. Or if there's other players of that ilk out there, so yeah, I think they will improve. Disappointment today in terms of the performance, but still grounds for optimism going forward, and still Champions League is very much attainable for them this season. But I just feel as if on a little bit of a downward trajectory at the moment, at a stage of the season where you really want to be heading up and you want to be moving in that direction. You feel as if Newcastle, that's exactly where Newcastle are heading at the moment. Manchester United need to kind of steady things and find a little bit of form and a little bit of kind of cohesion to their play between now and the end of the season. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
And a League Cup in the bag, and he's still in the running for the FA Cup and Europa League. Just to ask you finally, Kenny, we heard just before kick-off today that Brendan Rodgers, by mutual decision, had left Leicester City, the job where he's been for a number of seasons now, after leaving Celtic. Is that interesting timing, do you think? Tottenham are without a manager. Brendan Rodgers decides to leave Leicester. Is there any chance you think he could end up at White Hart Lane? Or
I think there's a chance. Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think Brendan Rodgers always felt as if he's capable of managing those so-called top 6 clubs, but I don't think his experience this year at Leicester has helped him in that respect. I think Brendan for some time has been on a bit of an upward kind of trajectory. When he left Celtic to go to Leicester, those first couple of seasons again went quite well. 2 top 5 finishes, wasn't it? With a very talented squad, money to spend, invested that money wisely. Felt actually if it was an opportunity lost those first 2 seasons, Champions League football, I thought it was there, not for the taking, but a real opportunity presented itself. They actually dropped off both of those seasons. But certainly this season has been absolute kind of car crash stuff. He really looked very much out of sorts early in the season. I'd go as far as to say, look as if he didn't want to be at the football club. I wouldn't go as far as to say asking to be sacked, but looked very disillusioned and out of sorts, wasn't enjoying himself at the football club. Brendan Rodgers kind of pulled himself together, kind of stuck at it, and it looked as if he turned things around pre-World Cup, got a good run of results, and people looked at it and thought, well, that's it now, Leicester put some distance between themselves. They're on that kind of upward trajectory, but yeah, no, it hasn't happened. They've lost a bit of form. They've lost that rhythm. I saw them play against Arsenal, like I said, a few weeks ago, and they looked as if they were a team in trouble, lacking any type of confidence whatsoever. Haven't won a game since then. So I understand it. I think if the owners are looking at it, if they got their feelers out and they sense as if there's a bit of a disconnect between the manager and the players have stopped listening, and the manager himself, hasn't got the fire in his belly to kind of lead them out of the position that they're in. It probably is the right decision. And yeah, I think you're right. Brendan Rodgers has got to hope that maybe in the summer he's got enough money in the bank in terms of what he's achieved previously at Leicester and before that to be in contention for maybe 1 or 2 jobs at Tottenham. One you've mentioned there, can't think of too many other offhand. Brendan Rodgers, the manager, I think potentially probably feels as if he could manage abroad. Might be a case of he might think, let's go maybe Italy, Spain. Might be somewhere over there he feels as if he could manage. And maybe not going to rebuild his career, but maybe, take himself away from the Premier League for a period of time, have some measure of success, and maybe he's young enough to bounce back into a top job maybe in a year or two. Because at the moment, I don't think those big jobs are up for grabs in the Premiership. The Tottenham one is the only one. Does he come into the consideration, the conversation? I think he does. Is he in a position of strength that he was maybe 12 to 18 months ago? No, I don't think that he is. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that develops.